In this video, we're going to look a little bit more in depth into using the screen sharing options. So I have a SharePod open currently, and in that SharePod, I don't currently have anything shared. So that's what we're going to do next. If I click simply on this button one time, it's going to ask me what I'd like to share from the screen standpoint. So when I say sharing my screen, as in that means my desktop, like my full desktop. It means, or I can also choose an application. An example would be software. So let's say you're teaching one of the management courses or statistics courses, and you're looking at the TI-84 software, the emulator that's used on the desktop. That would be one example. Or if you're demonstrating, say, the SPSS software, or you're showing a website, something to that effect. So an application would allow you to do that. So you choose one of those applications I just mentioned. Let's say for a website that would be Chrome or Firefox. Or you can choose an individual window. So if you have windows that are open and you want to show those, you can also make that choice. Desktop will again do the entire desktop. So if you're going to switch between applications, that actually might be a better choice. So let's look at that one first. When I get to the bottom, you'll also see make the SharePod full screen for all attendees. This would be a good option if you really want to control what the attendees are seeing. It will take over their desktop and show them only what you show them, but in some cases that's going to be a positive thing because it will allow you to keep them from necessarily looking at other stuff. The downside would be it does take over their desktop for the period of time that you're doing it, and they won't be able to see the chat or anything else. But again, they can get out of that mode, but it's a choice that you'll have to make depending on how you want them to experience the share. So when I click on share, it immediately closes everything else and then shows me that I'm sharing full screen. And you can see it showing me down here at the bottom. You'll see, and there's the little Adobe Connect icon. That is telling me that I'm sharing my desktop, and that's what everyone can see, including students actually can see that. Now I've got my iPad running, so I'm going to take a screen capture of this so you can see what students will see. So hopefully that will be helpful to you as well. So to get out of this full screen mode, I can go back to, see that at the bottom of the screen here, you see that I've got my Adobe Connect sharing. If I click on that again to open it, it will open back into my screen sharing window. I'm again going to take a screen capture of that to show you. And I have some choices. I can stop sharing, and then I will no longer be sharing anything with anyone. So that's how you get into the desktop share. Now let's look at the other options. Click on share again, I can choose an application. So let's choose application, and then I get a listing of the applications that I have. So it could be my inbox, it could be Chrome, it could be Photoshop, it could be Adobe Connect, or sorry, Adobe Captivate, which I have running right now to do this recording. But again, I'm choosing an application. So let's go ahead and choose Google Chrome because that's probably the easiest one. I click share, and what it does is it just pulls that up, and then I can set it there, and then it will render this on everyone else's screen in sharing that particular application. So that's another option, and I can do the same thing I did before. I can still go back to my little sharing icon here and then click stop sharing, and it will stop sharing that item. Let's look at our last option, which was window. So I've got a lot of different windows open, and I can do the same thing. Let's actually do Excel, click share, and now it will share just this window within that block. So it's a little bit smaller window that's only going to share just what you see here. And again, to get out of it, I'll go back to Connect, click on that, and click Stop Sharing. So that screen share again becomes very valuable in being able to show applications. In my experience, I actually prefer to do a full desktop share. And I know that seems silly because you think, well, that's in your entire desktop and it's really large. This is true. However, it gives you the flexibility to move between applications, and it also, I think, gives the students a better experience because it seems to render a little bit faster on the student's end of things than application and window does. That's been my experience with several different online meeting tools that I've used. That desktop just tends to be a little faster and seems to work a little bit better when it comes to showing everything. So I'm going to cancel out of that. And I want to go into meeting. Other thing I want to show you about this as well is there's another a couple of different things you may want to look at from the preferences standpoint. So when we go into preferences and you go into screen share, you can also look at quality as something that, you know, if you've got students who are on low bandwidth, you may want to make this lower. It will make the video a little bit, it will be less clear, but it will stream to them at a lower bit rate, so therefore they'll have a better experience. Also, this show application cursor. If you're showing an application that has a very specific cursor type, you want to turn this on because then they will see what it looks like. Otherwise, it's a more generic pointer. And the generic pointer is nice for a lot of things, but if it's important that they see like if you're going through some technical information, you may want them to actually see the right cursors. So that's something to do. Once you change this, it will stay that way. You don't have to change it every time. It will stay. So I'm going to click done. And that is how you look at those screen shares. So again, screen sharing is very important when it comes to applications. It's very important in showing websites or doing demonstrations, and making that change with the cursors may affect the way students experience it. Now, I realize it may be a little difficult to get into that or difficult to see whether or not it's working properly. One way you can test that it worked the way you think it should work is a couple of things. Number one, when you open up Adobe Connect and you've installed everything properly, Adobe Connect should show down here at the bottom within the bar as a separate application. If it doesn't show as a separate application, you cannot do screen share. So make sure that when you start, it's separate. If it's not, go back to the test page that you were given and make sure that the add-in has been installed. So that's one thing to check. The other thing you notice is as soon as I went into screen share, especially when I use desktop, it closes everything down, or minimizes, I'm sorry, not closes, it minimizes everything so that all you see is what's on the desktop. So that's two things that are happening that will help you to determine that it's working properly. And also, of course, as always, ask your students and they should be able to tell you whether or not it is working properly. So in any case, that is a demonstration of screen share. Hopefully that answers your questions and gives you a little bit more clarity on how it works.